Welcome to That 30 Show, a podcast where we talk about the good, the bad, and the surprising parts of our 30s. I'm G, and I'm finally 30. I'm excited to find out if 30 really is the new 20, because if it is, then the best years are yet to come.
And I'm David. I'm entering my mid-30s. I used to have no back pain or trouble sleeping, but now I live off a healthy diet of self-help books and dream of being in bed by 10 p.m. every night. Join us each week as we try to figure out together what life in your 30s is all about.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for tuning in to this bonus Lessons On episode, which, as a quick reminder, is a bit of a continuation of last week's episode where I shared my lessons on the psychology of money. Our whole recording ran a little long, so we're splitting it up and releasing this in two separate parts. So this week, G is going to share her lessons from a book she's read called Limitless by Jim Kwik. Have you ever wanted to read faster or forget something as soon as you hear it? We explored this week the limitless possibilities of your mind and learn how to break down the barriers you've set for yourself. Jim Kwik encourages readers to break free from self-imposed limitations and provides tangible tips to unlock your brain's potential. So keep listening to find out what are the four horsemen of the digital age, which ones G and I are most susceptible to, what a good brain diet looks like, and much more as we turn shelf-help into true self-help.
You know, the past couple of years, maybe year or so, I've been finding myself reading less nonfiction books. I don't know why. I'm starting to feel that a lot of the books kind of say really similar things, or at least the books that I like to read say really similar things. And so at this point, I used to read a lot of books about habits and things like that. And now I'm just like, okay, well, they kind of say the same things.
Because G is a master of habits.
Well, I've learned a lot of things already, and people say it in different ways, but it's essentially the same thing that they're saying. So yeah, that's just one thing. This is the first nonfiction book that I've read in a while. I've been reading a lot of fun fantasy novels, which trains a whole different part of my brain, which is something I'm going to talk about. Well, it's I have to dig deep into that creative side of my brain.
No, I mean, what fantasy books are you reading?
Court
of Thorn and Roses?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
That kind of stuff.
No, I actually tried reading that book because I didn't.
Did you really?
Before I read it, I didn't know it was complete trash. It was so highly. It's so highly rated on Goodreads, and I like fantasy. I'm like, okay, let me dig.
Oh yeah, it's not the fantasy that you would
book.
Like.
No,
yeah, it's not that kind of fantasy. It's like a Twilight kind of fantasy.
I could not finish it. I was 25% into it, and then I was wanting to throw up, and then so I stopped.
I've been enjoying that series, and there's 6 books in there, so I've been blazing through them. Okay, but back to what I was going to talk about today. The last nonfiction book I read was Limitless by Jim Kwik, and I think we've talked about it a little bit before. I can't remember in what context. I think I was just talking about his podcast. I thought the book was really good. I always love books that have tangible tips or little prompts that will help you, challenge you to do something. Because as Jim says in the book, that he'll mention that if you don't actually apply the things that you're reading, then it's shelf help and not self-help. So He has a lot of quips like that in the book, which I love. So Jim is a brain coach, and he became a brain coach because he suffered this traumatic brain injury.
Oh, let me just quickly interrupt. That's what you shared on the pod before. You told us the story.
Yes.
Of how he was the child with the broken brain. So you shared that backstory.
Okay,
I guess not everyone listens to every episode, so you can summarize it quickly.
I'll be quick. Okay. So he suffered a traumatic brain injury. He had a learning disability. And so he had to work a lot harder to be able to learn, I guess. And so then he became this brain coach, this renowned brain coach. He's coached very famous people all over the world. And so this book is really to teach people that your brain is unlimited, and you should unlimit your brain and your every limitation that you put on yourself, you should like try and get rid of.
It's like that Bradley Cooper movie.
Yes, I think that's where he was like drawing his like inspiration from. But it's so funny though, because like the way that the book is structured, I would have wished that he gave us like all these tips on like reading and thinking about things in advance so that I could practice everything throughout the book. But he like puts it at the end, like all these tips on speed reading and everything like that. So I'm like, oh man, now I have to.
After you spend 10 hours reading the book, now he tells you how you could have done it in 5 hours. Thank you. Helpful.
Yeah, so that I thought that was a bit interesting. But he had to go through a lot of like background on stuff. I want to first talk about, he says that there are 4 horsemen of our age, like the downfalls to our digital world. So I want to know which one do you think is most prevalent in your life? So the first one is digital deluge, which is like information overload. Ignorance is a choice now because you're just so overloaded with information all the time. And, you know, he says that creates like poor memory, mental fog and fatigue and all that stuff. So that's the first one. His fun fact there was that like we now consume as much data in a single day as like an average person from the 1400s would have absorbed in their entire lifetime. The second one is digital distractions. So, you know, with all of your mobile devices, we used to say, be right back, BRB, when we're online. And now we don't because we never leave. We're always there. We live in that world. The third one is digital dementia. So if you think back to when the last time you had to remember a phone number, we just overuse the digital technology that we have and it breaks down all of our cognitive abilities and our short-term memory is
you know what's funny is I can remember phone numbers from my childhood, like my childhood
right?
My dad's mobile number, my aunt's home number, but I cannot tell you my partner's mobile number.
Well, it's because you don't try, like you don't even,
we don't need to.
And so, you know, he says that you should really like force yourself to recall information instead of rely, even if there is an easier way, because your memory was just going to really like deteriorate if you don't strengthen your permanent memory. It reminds me of when, you know, you used to like drop me off a lot at home because we used to live close to each other. And every time I was like, you still put in my address in your GPS. Like, why? Even though you dropped me off so many times, but every time you still put your GPS or my address in the GPS. And then the fourth one is digital deduction, which is that there's just an opinion on everything out there. And if you want to know how to feel about like a hot topic, you can just go online and get all the opinions of others. So it's giving like a lot of extreme influence over our thinking in the era of the influencer. And we're letting technology do all the deductions for us. There's less critical thinking now. And then the fifth one, which is like it wasn't part of the 4 horsemen, but he says there's also digital depression, which is like comparing yourself to others. Because you're seeing what other people have and what other people are doing and things like that. So those are like the pitfalls of our digital age. Which one do you think you fall into the most? I mean, everything, but.
Yeah. Well, before I answer, just a quick reflection on the fourth one. I think that's a really good point, which is that the digital deduction point. Because I think I'm definitely, maybe this is answering your question, but I think I'm definitely susceptible to that in the sense that I do consume a lot of opinions out there. And I think that the vast majority of my opinions are based on other people's opinions that I've heard and I either agree with or I disagree with.
Really?
To be completely transparent, I don't think I come up with much original thought.
So when I read this, I was like, well, this is the one that David's least likely going to
I mean, I would like to think so, but to be completely humble and non-egotistical about it, I don't think so. I think I read a lot of like news reports and like listen to a lot of news podcasts and news shows and stuff. And this takes on like, Israel and like AI and Elon and whatever. And so I do consume a lot of opinions. And I think I consume more different opinions than people. I think my echo chamber, I don't know, everyone probably say that, but I feel like I subscribe and listen to very liberal stuff and I subscribe and listen to very conservative stuff as well. And I don't know, maybe not everyone does that. So I think I get a diversity of opinions, but I do think a lot of my opinions are just things I've heard that I agree with. It's interesting.
Mine certainly are like that.
Much original thought. Yeah, I don't think I have that much original thought. But I think, so the first one, I think, is the one that I'm most susceptible to, which is the digital deluge. Because as I just explained, I do, I am on Twitter and I do consume a lot of podcasts and I watch news shows and stuff and I read so many books and all that. Yeah, I think I consume way too much. I think I'm less distracted than the normal person, even though I'm addicted to social media, is because I have those apps that block it. I have all my notifications turned off. So I think I'm actually above average when it comes to distractions. The third one is what? What's the third one again?
Dementia. I like how you forgot the third one. It's dementia.
Ironic. I do have that for sure because I do something like the way I operate especially at work, but in my own life as well, especially with all my to-do lists, is that I find tools and systems to outsource my memory so that I never rely on my memory for anything. And I do that deliberately and intentionally because I don't want to forget things. So every time someone's like, oh, I'm going to forget this, remind me. I'm like, well, you know how I'm going to remind you? I'm just going to set a reminder on my phone. So why don't you just set a reminder on your phone? Because that's how I remember things. So I'm very systematic and diligent in having to-do lists, calendar reminders, calendar appointments, notes, everything, so that I don't rely on my memory at all. And so while that is something I consciously do because I think it helps my life, yeah, I think Jim's point is probably true in that over time, because I've done this for so many years, that's probably has led to how my memory has deteriorated because I don't rely on it at all.
I mean, and one of the things that Jim stresses a lot is that the brain is a muscle. It is like exercise. You have to train it and it will become stronger and expand. I think I'm I fall into the digital distraction the most because I'm essentially...
Yeah, you respond to my messages so quickly all the time. It makes me...
Well, I also prioritize your messages. So that's a whole different thing.
All right. Let's not go there. I feel like I'm about to be told off.
Okay, so ever since reading that book, I'm like, okay, I'm going to stop using GPS. I'm going to just try and get my way to places based on
Have you gotten lost?
What I know. I think I've taken longer routes than I need to. Because I've gone to like friends' places and I'm like, I don't remember it taking this long in the past.
That's so funny.
He talks about geniuses and how everyone is a genius.
I've met some people. They're not geniuses, trust me.
So geniuses express themselves in one of four manners. So you can tell me which genius you are. The dynamo genius will express their genius through creativity and ideas and like art. The blaze genius, things become clearer through interactions with others. So they're like the master communicators. The tempo genius expresses through the ability to see the big picture and being able to like stay the course, the Nelson Mandelas of the world. And then the steel genius is good at sweating the small stuff and doing something with like the details.
Interesting. I don't know how I feel about this framework about four geniuses that we all are, but for what it's worth, to answer your question, I definitely, if I had to choose, I probably will be the last one. We talked about it on my birthday episode, but one of my strengths is detail orientation.
Do you always think about, do you find yourself always thinking about the end rather than the means to achieve it?
Like, can you give me an example of what?
Like if you're at work, for example, you're like, what is the goal at the end versus like
I always do,
how to get
because
there?
I always want to try and understand why we're doing something and for what purpose. So is that a yes? Maybe for that?
Yeah, I think so.
Because a lot of people don't ask that question. A lot of people don't bother needing to know. It's just like, oh, I'm told to do this. Okay, I'll do it. For example, we talked about on my birthday episode how I get, I get riled up about things because I'm always asking why. I'm always questioning things because I'm asking, well, to what end? Like, you want me to work from home only 2 days a week and come into office. Well, why am I coming to the office? But like you were like much more chill about it. So do you think you probably don't?
I don't focus on the why a lot. Like if you give me the goal, I'll be like, okay, this is the goal. How do we get there? What are the steps we need to take to get there? I focus more on the means to achieve the end rather than the end itself. So I guess I'm
not like that. Yeah. You tell me the goal and I will tell you why I agree or disagree with your goal. Is that really funny?
I don't know why I found that so funny. It's just such a different way of thinking when someone gives you a goal, or someone gives us a goal. Okay, so like he gives us like a whole bunch of background, and then he talks about like being limitless is about three things. It's about the mindset, the motivation, and then the methods. So you basically need all three. You can't just go in with your methods, because then you don't have, like, if you just have all the tools but you don't have the motivation or the mindset to do it, then you're not going to do it. With your mindset, you have to get rid of the limiting beliefs that you've told yourself, that you can't memorize things or you can't remember things. Like, have you ever been to a restaurant where the waitress will take all of your orders and don't write it down?
I'm just sitting there, but like, really, buddy? You think you're that good?
And then they do it, right? Or sometimes they don't. But like, they'll come back. He was telling the story about how he, like, when he was younger, he saw this at a restaurant, and not only did the waitress come back with everything, but she got all their like specific orders right, like salad dressing on the side for this person, you know, and everything like that. So that, I think that was the first moment where he was like, wow, like, this is possible. I could do this too. Okay,
but what happens when they do fuck up your order and they didn't write it down?
I don't know. They could have. they could have remembered it correctly. They just didn't.
I've having been through that situation, I'm definitely very annoyed. I'm just like, all right, buddy, just write it down. It's not a big deal. Like, but no, you're right. Most of the time they don't.
Well, maybe they're trying to train their memory, you know.
They all read Jim Quick's book, and that's why they're doing that.
Yeah. First, he talks a lot about mindset and making sure that you kind of just like open your mind to what is possible.
I think it's something that I know. I remember talking to my dad about it, which is if we reflect on our lives and the things we have done or haven't, or more specifically, the things that we haven't done, why didn't we do it? I think 9 times out of 10, the answer is we stopped ourselves. Like, there was no reason other than we just didn't do it. Either we gave ourselves an excuse, we didn't have the motivation or discipline or the drive. We are often the biggest obstacles to our own progress. And so I think what Jim is kind of saying, or what I'm hearing, is that like, when you limit yourself, that's something that you can change. And once you change that mindset of, well, let's not put any unnecessary or artificial limitations, self-imposed limitations, you can probably achieve a lot more.
Yeah, and I think that's why he put that as first. Like, as much as I wanted him to put methods first, like, I think the first step he put is mindset, because most people have those beliefs that they can't do it, right? They can't do something. One quote that I love from him is that if you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them. And that's like, to me, I'm like, whoa, like, you're so right. Fight for it and you get to keep it. So.
And I'm really bad with this, in that I am very limiting. I think I talked about it in my birthday episode where you asked me like who inspires me, and I mentioned one of the things is, my partner inspires me, because she doesn't have that. Her mindset is she has the goal, and then she'll, right? Remember I said she decides what her goal is, and then she'll figure out how to get there, no matter what. Whereas for me, I'm like, oh, let me tell you 10 reasons why I can't do it.
Yeah. So
I need to read this book.
Go to his mindset.
Limitless.
Go to his mindset chapter, and he'll help you out. Okay, so the second one is motivation, right? So he says you need things like a purpose. Like, why are you doing the things that you're doing? Like, what is your ultimate goal in doing something? And you know how people always say, oh, it's not about the motivation. It's just about like the discipline. But I think Jim argues is that it is about the motivation. Like, if you have a purpose, if you have a why for doing what you're doing, then that is the motivation. He has some recommendations for generating like limitless brain energy. He says a good brain diet is super important. There are some things like brain foods that he really recommends, like he swears by. Some of those things are like avocados, blueberries, broccoli, dark chocolate.
Okay.
Eggs, green leafy vegetables, salmon.
Oh my God, you're literally
naming off everything you eat.
Yeah, like everything I eat on a almost daily basis is what you're saying. Wow. Yeah. Why am I still so stupid? All right.
Salmon. Maybe it's because of your mindset. You're not stupid. Salmon, turmeric, walnuts, and most importantly, water, because your body is made up of
Wow.
water.
Actually, yeah, like jokes aside, I consume vast amounts of all those things except dark chocolate and turmeric. Everything else I eat a lot of.
I think the dark chocolate kind of gives you that hit of like wakes your brain up kind of thing, because it's like something that's a little bit sweet. Killing those automatic negative thoughts. I think that's where he talked about if you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them, like your automatic response.
But you know why it's so easy and tempting to do that, to fight for your limitations? I think it's the same reason why it's very tempting to adopt a victim mentality. It's because once you do that, you absolve yourself of the responsibility to do something with your life. It's why, speaking of geniuses, I think this is, I don't know if it's in the book Grit or whatever, but the concept I've heard is like, that's why we like to reward talent and why we look up to geniuses, because we think, oh, I'll never be like them. They have something I don't. And when we think about it that way, we absolve ourselves the responsibility to achieve greatness too. But what we don't want to admit and realize is that the vast majority of success in life, maybe not the Elons and the Steve Jobs of the world, because they're the outliers, but the vast majority of success in the world, as Jonathan would like to disagree with me on, is through hard work. And when we deny that, we can absolve ourselves of the responsibility to achieve our potential. And we just be like, we're victims, we're being oppressed. I think it's just so much more tempting to fight for your limitations. And I speak from personal experience in the sense that I think I do that a lot. I don't know if I victimize myself, but I certainly make excuses a lot.
I like how you talked about the responsibility part, because that's exactly what Jim said. Jim is super into superheroes, and his favorite is Spider-Man. And of course, Spider-Man's famous quote is, "With great power comes great responsibility." And he argues that it's actually the opposite. With great responsibility comes great power. I think, you have to just take it upon yourself to know that it is your responsibility. And it's the whole point of the book is to express to you what is possible, right? So I think like that's why people, after reading the book, they're like, whoa, like there are things that I can do beyond my own limitations. Okay, having like positive peer groups, surrounding yourself with good people. These are all.
I think that's actually a big thing. And that's why I think a lot of people like to hang out with you, G, or my friend group, or I do, right? Because you have that positive influence on people. You have that positivity, that optimism that I think people want more of in their life. And especially in your 30s, I think a big theme for people is realizing that you just don't need to suffer anything in your life that you don't want to. So you put up with less, you tolerate less. You want to just surround yourself with the people that give you the good vibes. It's
like you've already put enough limitations on yourself. Like, why do you need more people to put limitations on you, right? This one, I kind of chuckled because he's like, brain protection, like don't put your head at risk. And I was thinking in my head, I was like, don't go on roller coasters, don't go, don't do any of that stuff.
I was at Disneyland in Hong Kong, and Disneyland is pretty fucking tame, but there was one where it looked like there was at least some risk of me knocking my head. And so I did not go on it, even though I lined up with my partner for like an hour and a half. And then she just went on it herself. And then I took the emergency exit like a wuss.
Yeah.
I was like, it's not worth it.
It's not worth it. Protect your brain. There's a few other ones. Maybe I won't go into them because they're pretty like obvious, I guess. Just sleep, stress management, things like that. But I will get into the methods now, because that is sort of what I went in there for, and maybe what people might be most interested in. You got to get your mindset right. You got to get the motivations right. And then you got to have the methods to be able to implement being limitless, I suppose. So the first one is focus. So he gives a lot of like tips and tricks on how to maintain your focus, because, oftentimes we, instead of practicing concentration, we practice distraction, is what he says. And I'm like, oh man, I am thoroughly guilty of that, because I want to concentrate, but instead my actions are, that I focus on distraction. He says that like when you're distracted, it's not your mind that's moving, it's your awareness. So like when you're talking to someone, you start wandering. You're not being aware of what they're saying. Like you're moving around in your surroundings. So a tip that he said was like, imagine a glowing ball. And just as we bring like our awareness back in meditation, like if your mind wanders, you're like, oh, bring it back. if you put this glowing ball on whatever you're supposed to focus on, or like if you're talking to someone, put the glowing ball on them. And if you notice that during whatever you're doing that like the glowing ball is moving, you put it back. So it's like using the meditation techniques in your actual life, not just during meditation. He stresses that you should only try to do one thing at a time. Even if you think something is so mundane, like say if you're washing dishes and I don't know, watching something, he's like of the camp that you shouldn't do that. You should do one thing at a time to train your focus, which I'm definitely very guilty of, like brushing my teeth and like watching a video or whatever, you know?
Yeah. I became more cognizant of that after I read the Stolen Focus book I've mentioned on this podcast about it. Just really helped me understand and agree that, yeah, we fundamentally cannot multitask. And so, and for that reason, I listen to podcasts less.
Same goes on your like computer. If you're working on your computer, shut down like all other tabs or applications. I'm so guilty of having like a million tabs open.
Oh my God, are you one of those people? Where the tabs are so small that you can barely click on it?
Okay, it's not that bad, but
okay.
I have a lot of tabs open. And he's like, just focus on one thing at a time. Like it's going to be way more efficient than trying to multitask, which fair enough. It apparently takes 23 minutes to get back to a task once you're distracted. So that sounds like a waste of time.
So, you know, for example, at work, I don't know if I should say this. I'm still doing my work. But like, so my work uses Microsoft Teams. Whether you use Slack, doesn't matter. The messaging platform, right? I have every single chat muted. And what that means is when someone messages me, there's no pop-up.
Oh, wow.
Because of what you just said. When there's a pop-up, it's so distracting, it takes me out of it. And I often realize when I'm in a project or I'm in a task and I'm focused, I will realize, oh my gosh, 20 minutes just passed by. I haven't checked my messages. Let me go check it. But I was able to achieve so much more during that 20 minutes because I wasn't distracted by any pop-up notifications.
Wow. You're so good at focusing. That doesn't surprise me, but you're really good at like...
Well, I don't know if I'm good at focusing, but I'm aware of how I can be easily distracted, I think, and I try not to get distracted.
I think you are good at focusing. I think you are. Okay. So there is this breathing technique that he recommended, which is called like the 4-7-8 method. So basically you inhale quietly through your nose for 4 counts. And then you hold your breath for 7 counts. And then you exhale again to 8 counts. And you repeat this like 4 times. And apparently this is a very good like technique to bring your focus back if you find yourself like super all over the place and distracted and everything like that. To bring
so many different variations to that. I haven't heard of 4-7-8 specifically, but like box breathing and all that. I think what I have heard of is just the general physiology of if you breathe out slower than you breathe in, that will just trigger something in your body to calm it down. I don't know if it's about focusing, but yeah, that 4-7-8 is the same thing in the sense that you are breathing in a shorter amount of time than you're breathing out. So I think that physiologically triggers something in your body.
This next one is one that I'm wondering if you're like
susceptible.
Yes. He says, do something that has been causing you stress. Because like the thing that's always in the back of your mind, you're procrastinating, the thing that's always in the back of your mind, you're like, oh, I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to do this. He's like, do the thing that is causing you.
Oh, so you think I'm good at this?
No, I think this is something that you don't do.
Oh, yeah. You're right. I'm so bad at this.
Yeah. Like you're always thinking about the stuff that you have to do.
Yes.
The things that you have to check off your to-do list because you have one, because you have a to-do list. So he is like that. Getting rid of that will help.
In a way, the to-do list helps me not think about it, but because I'm so bad at actually getting that thing done and off my to-do list, and it sort of it stays in my mind in that way rather than if I just find a way to do it, then it can never not be on my mind at all. But yeah, I'm really bad at that.
So those are some tips for focus. In terms of studying, Jim says that we should be lifelong learners. So we should always be learning. And so studying for something isn't
that what we're doing with this podcast, for example? We're reading books and sharing what we've learned. What do you mean studying, though? Am I trying to memorize something for an exam?
I think that's what he's trying to say. This is not learning. This is like studying. So
I've always thought that memory is archaic and anachronistic in the sense that like because of computers and you don't need to memorize anything anymore.
But then your brain is just going to decay if you don't train your memory muscle, you know? Wouldn't that make you prone to diseases such as like dementia and all that stuff? I don't know if there's a linkage there, but
Damn. All right.
You know? Okay, memory, this one, memory and speed reading, those were the two things that I was like very interested in because I want to improve my memory. Like my memory sucks. Visualization is super key when you're trying to remember something because we don't daydream in words, but we daydream in pictures. So attaching whatever you're trying to remember to a visual or to a picture will help you remember it a lot better. Attaching a reference point to the thing that you're trying to remember, like associating it with something you already know. Do you have a hard time remembering names?
I think I have a hard time remembering anything in general.
I don't think that's something that, like, you don't think that's something that you need to improve.
I don't have an incentive to improve it just because, as I said earlier, I feel like having a good memory is no longer a valuable skill in this world.
AI control us?
I mean, sooner or later, I'm going to get a Neuralink implant that allows me to access
Oh my
things.
gosh. Scary. Yeah, so just associating things that you're trying to remember with like emotion, with pictures, and not trying to just strictly repeat things over and over again. So I think that's really helpful. I think I can work on that. Speed reading. Do you want to read faster? Is that something that you're interested in?
Yeah, no, I do. I'm a pretty slow reader. I think I read out loud in my head, which is very slow.
That is exactly one of the things that prevents us from reading quicker. But everyone kind of does it. So one thing is like regression, which is something that I always do, is like rereading, because I'll find that like I want to reread to like really understand what I'm so like I'll read a paragraph and I'll go back and read the paragraph again. I'll go back and read the paragraph again, which is why I'm so slow. But that actually hampers your comprehension and it like disrupts the reading process. It loses the meaning and the essence. So he's like, don't go back and reread things. And then the sub-vocalization, which is what you just said, like saying the words as we read them, because we talk slower than we can think. So if you're reading the things out loud in your head, you go much slower. And just really like push the muscle, you know, like similar with exercise, the more you push yourself, the faster you can run. Same with reading. So he says there's this exercise that you can try where you read comfortably for 4 minutes and then you figure out what your reading speed is. Then you do the same for 3 minutes and you try to read the exact same amount of words in 3 minutes. And then you try to do 2 minutes and 1 minute. And then after that exercise, like if you keep doing that, your reading speed will improve because the next set you read, you're going to read a lot more. Yeah. And read like for 20 to 25 minutes at a time. Don't read for too long. You remember the sort of the first things that you read and the last things that you read, and everything in between you mostly forget. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot more stuff that he talks about in the book. So I really enjoyed thinking about like opening up my mind to what is possible with your brain. And then all of the methods that he suggested, I feel like those could be pretty useful in everyday life.
I think the only part that I personally, I don't know, not struggle with, but have a bit of a disconnect or disengagement is, I feel like this is similar to a book that, not a book, but a part of a book that might be talking about, okay, this is how you can walk faster. You know, twist your hips. I don't know. You put your heel first, or I don't know, this is like, or you swing your arms, whatever. And you can walk like 50% faster. Wouldn't you get, isn't that great? You get to your destination so much faster. You save so much more time. And so for some reason, the desire for me personally, I'm not saying I'm right or I'm just like, oh, this is actually just how I feel. But like this desire to read faster, even though like I could sit here and definitely tell you, hey, I have all these books I want to read. Of course it makes, if I can read faster, it's good. But for some reason, I just don't have that desire to like optimize myself in that way. I feel like I enjoy the process of just reading at the pace that I do, because I don't actually remember a lot of the things that I read. I might just remember 1 or 2 key takeaways from every single book I read, even though I spend hours and hours on it. For me, the process of reading is what I really enjoy. In the moment, I highlight things, I learn things. At least in the moment I learn things, I might forget it. And so, ironically, I'm not very good at the journey before destination thing, but I do that with reading. And that's why this idea of like speed reading is not as appealing, even though rationally and logically, it does help me achieve the results I want better. Yeah, I don't know.
That's interesting because you read a lot of nonfiction books. And so when I read nonfiction books, it's because I want to improve my life and somehow, and like apply the things that I'm learning to improve my life. Otherwise, I don't really find enjoyment in reading a nonfiction book. Like I'd rather read something that's like fun and like if I'm just going to enjoy the reading. Okay. I don't actually enjoy the reading for nonfiction books, I think. Like I enjoy if I learn something and I can apply it, but otherwise I'm like,
so actually that might be a difference actually between you and me. It's not that I don't want to apply what I learn. I think if I can, that's great, but it's not actually a necessary ingredient. I think part of my personality is that I like learning for the sake of learning. And so like, for example, I'll read books on things that have no application to my life. And I enjoy just knowing more about the world and knowing more about something I didn't know before. So maybe that's a difference. Interesting. Well, hopefully, I mean, you dropped so many useful and tangible sort of facts there. And I guess it's hard to remember all of them. But like if anyone's listening and just takes away one or two things they can try, hopefully I sort of add some value to your life.
I'll give you one thing that I'm looking forward to trying because I'm like, I don't know if this is actually going to work, but this has to do with presentation. So if you want to be able to deliver a presentation without, using a bunch of notes and like speaking from your notes, it's like, he's like, write down 10 points that you want to deliver in your presentation. And then think about a space in your home or somewhere that you've walked a lot before, like, where everything is, and like walk through that home or that destination and point out 10 things, like in sequential order. Like maybe the first thing is like, you go to your bedroom, and then you see your bed, and then you walk through, and then you go into your kitchen and you see your stove, things like that. So pick out 10 things, like destinations or things that you pass by. And then you associate each of those points on your presentation with one of those settings. And this is apparently going to help your recall when you get to presenting.
Have you heard of memory castles?
No.
I don't know if that's the correct term, but I think it's just what you're suggesting here. I remember learning about this when I was a little kid, and I was trying to do it. But it's a common memory trick, which is using a memory castle. Like there's different rooms in this or different places in this house or this castle, and then like you just store things in different physical locations in your mind, and that helps you recall it. So it sounds like a version of that. Yeah,
like word association and things like that.
I remember I tried to learn this when I was a kid because I learned about how you can count cards in blackjack, but you can only count cards if you have like the whole repertoire of cards in your head, and you like one by one cross it out as you see it being revealed on the table. Then you know the probabilities of what's being left over. And so I remember trying to create a memory castle with like 52 rooms, and every room would have one of the cards in it. I don't know if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah. I think so.
Similar.
At his conferences, Jim will go and ask each person their name, and he can do like 200 people, and then he will recall them in order and backwards after. It's a great party trick that he can do.
I think we should wrap it up there. It's been a long class and session.
Yes.
And hopefully people found some of that information interesting, that you can help you, whether in your 30s or not, I suppose.
Yeah, can help you anytime.
Well, next week, hopefully, not next week, but next episode, whenever that comes out. I'm not sure if we'll split this or whatnot. So hopefully we'll have a guest on. Haven't really confirmed yet what that might look like, but thanks for tuning in, and give us a rating, share with a friend. If you know a friend whose brain has turned to mush, they might need some tips. And if you have a friend who's crazy with their money, remember that they're not crazy, they just have a different lived experience.
Tell a friend to tell a friend. Thanks everybody for listening. Bye.